Hi everyone. My name is Harrison Chappell, and today what I want to talk to you guys about is our foundations, the things that make us who we are as individuals, and there's many different elements to that. But what I've learned in my own personal life and the stories I've heard from others is that it actually really boils down to our memories. Our memories are what truly makes us who we are, and I'm going to tell you a little about myself to kind of get you to understand that idea. So I grew up in Maryland. I actually lived in California 8 years ago, and my family moved out there. And through my childhood, I was a little bit of a nerd, not going to lie. And unfortunately, a lot of kids didn't see me the way that you would consider normal, and I suffered a lot of bullying and harassment from my peers. And truly, as I stand here today, I'm not ungrateful for it. It made me the confident person that I am today. And but one of the things that really terrified me was having those memories in my head. They were painful memories. They're ones that they became baggage that I had to carry around with me. But the thing is that they actually were supporting me and I didn't even know it. And so when it came time that my family told me that we were moving out to California again, I was extremely excited. It was a chance for me to turn a new page in my life. And the reason we were moving is because there's something in my family that I like to refer to as the 8-year curse. As my mother would like to tell me, it's a little bit morbid, but I think it's kind of funny. But every 6 to 8 years, for some reason, the company my dad works for has some major malfunction and decides that they do not want to keep the company together anymore, so they liquidate it and lay my dad off. They want to move us somewhere that my dad's not comfortable with us living, like tornado country. And having my family already been through one tornado and me growing up in a southern background, my mother always liked to inform me in that beautiful southern accent of hers that if we go through another tornado, we might end up on the TV describing what it sounds like, and we don't want to be that family. So the third reason is usually because they get bought by a bigger company, and that's what happened in this case. And so we moved out to California, and now my dad works for Enphase doing solar energy. And so when I came out here, my parents had already told me that I would be going to Cardinal Newman. And it was definitely a culture shock for me because I was going to be coming from a public school with 1,000 kids to a Catholic school with around 600 to 700. And so I was terrified of how I was going to find my place here, and I had that baggage with me, and I didn't know how I was going to handle it because it was going to play a role in how I would project myself into the outside world. So I went to Miss Fuller's office on my first day of school, and I asked, how can I get integrated in the Newman community? What sport can I play? And it can't be a sport with hand-eye coordination because I have none. So she told me to do cross country because it would be super easy. Let's see if this works. As you can see by this beautiful picture of myself, which I'd have to say looks even better on this gigantic screen, it was not easy. It was quite painful, honestly, and you can see that through my obvious sweat and tears. So that is actually here at Cardinal Newman on our lovely 2-mile course, which is not that lovely. But cross-country actually opened a door for me that I wouldn't even realize it had. It's where I created numerous memories that I will carry with me to the very distant future, and they will be there for me in times of need. And so, in all honesty, I have to thank Ms. Fuller for sending me to the cross-country team because I wouldn't be standing here today. So today what I want to talk to you guys about is how do our memories make us who we are, and in turn allow us to connect with each other. So one of the movies I watched for my research was these 5 guys. I don't know if any of you are aware who they are, but they are the personified emotions of an 11-year-old girl named Riley who lived in Minnesota, and it's from Pixar's animation movie Inside Out. And Riley moved from Minnesota to San Francisco, something I can quite literally relate to because I moved from the East Coast to the West Coast. And she was terrified of trying to figure out who she was because she had those core memories, the memories from her childhood growing up in Minnesota that made her who she was, and she was terrified to let go of them, terrified to have to make space for new ones. And so as the movie continues on, she begins to lose who she is because she doesn't know how to integrate into this new life. And she attempted running away. I did not attempt that. I like shelter. So I found a way to get ingrained here in the community. But kind of Riley's attempt to go home made me think about that concept of home and how that plays a role in making us who we are. So I listened to a song called House That Built Me by Miranda Lambert. It's a country song. And in the music video, she talks about her home and how it made her who she was. And she actually goes back to her home and she knocks on the front door, and the person who lives there now answers. And She says, I don't think you know me, you probably don't, but the handprints here in the cement on the front steps, they're mine. And as the music video continues, she goes to the house and she goes through those core memories, the things that really make her who she is as a person, and goes on to actually explain how she's actually put those things into her music, into her future life, how she's come to find success. And at the end of the music video, she leaves the house, and it's this recognition for her that she knows that those memories are there for her, but she has to move on, but they are part of who she is. So I begin to think, well, what if we didn't know who we are? What if we lost who we are? What if we couldn't remember? And so I began to look at Alzheimer's patients. Alzheimer's patients, for those of you who don't know what Alzheimer's is, it is a degenerative brain disease that causes you to begin to forget who you are, memories, your experiences, and it's a breakdown. And so I actually got to work personally with Alzheimer's patients through my Eagle Scout project, and I also listened and interviewed other people for their stories who had loved ones with Alzheimer's. And one of the common things that I found in almost every Alzheimer's patient is frustration. Alzheimer's patients actually know what's happening to them. They understand that they are losing who they are, and it's frustrating for them. And so what happens is when their family members come to try to visit with them, it's actually traumatizing for them because they know that their loved one is forgetting who they are. And that's very hard to deal with because we try to see ourselves in others. And so when you go to that person and they don't know who you are, it's traumatizing for yourself, but it's actually really more traumatizing for them. And it creates frustration for them because they can't remember who you are. And in that frustration, it usually causes an upset for the family member and they leave the room. And see, that disconnect is what's the issue, is because our memories help us connect with each other. They're the stories we share with some of you, with the people who are sitting next to you and your friends and family. It's how we connect. And so I began to wonder, well, what would happen if we lost that connection? If everyone began to forget who they were and we couldn't connect with each other, what would happen? And how would society slowly degenerate if we could no longer connect? And so I looked at a quote by Elie Wiesel. It says, without memory, there is no culture. Without memory, there would be no civilization, no society, no future. For those of you who don't know, Elie Wiesel is actually a Holocaust survivor. In fact, he actually spent a majority of his childhood in one of the worst internment camps during the Holocaust at Auschwitz. And he endured some of the most terrible memories in human history. He was a part of them. He actually watched his father die in the internment camp that he lived in. And so for someone like him to have gone through what he went through and to express that memory is still an important part of society is amazing. It really goes to show that memory is a necessary part of who we are, of what it means to connect with each other. It's important. It's part of society. It makes us whole. It's how we connect. Our stories spread across the globe, and they make up what society is. So when I looked at this quote, I began to wonder, well, if society was to actually have a breakdown, since it is dependent on memory, what if I take a look at history books? So I'm sure we all love to read history textbooks. We all have them and love to lug them around. But I thought in terms, well, what if I took history textbooks and instead of just reading them as records, what if they were stories? What if they weren't simply just someone who wrote something down, but stories passed on from ancestor to grandchild that were shared throughout the world and that shaped what humanity is today? And so I decided I was going to look at a society that did not have that collective memory. So I read the book, The Giver. Some of you may have read this book already, but for those who haven't, I do recommend you read it. But The Giver covers the story of a society that does not have access to this collective memory. They don't have access to emotion, and it's because they lack access to that collective memory. So every day in the morning when these people wake up in this society, they take this injection, and they're told that it actually prevents them from being able to express emotion when that's really not the case of what happens. It blocks their ability to access that collective memory of society, the things that have shaped humanity, what it is. So it's this very bland society. They see things in black and white, they live by very basic rules, and they're devoid of conflict. And it's described as a utopian society, but that's truly not what it is. It's actually a fake utopian society that lives in dystopia because it lacks access to memory. And there's a main character in this book named Jonas, and he's what they call the receiver of memory, the person in the society responsible for holding all the memories of society, the collective ones that were lost before they transitioned into these communities. And so what Jonas realizes as he begins to experience these memories, he begins to see things in color and see things for what they truly are, and realizes that no one should be devoid of this. No one should have to live in a world where they don't have access to the memories of the collectiveness of society, to be unable to connect with each other in ways that are unimaginable. And so what he does is he escapes the society, and in doing so releases the memories back into the world. And you have to kind of visualize it in the book. But if you watch the movie, you actually begin to see the characters. It brings tears to their eyes as they slowly begin to see in color again. And it's because they're actually getting access to the things that they've forgotten for so long that allow them to connect with their loved ones, allow them to connect with their friends, the people around them, the things that shape who they are. And so what I want to leave you with today is remember your memories. I know that sounds funny, but give me a second, I'll bring it back around. Remember your memories because they truly do make who you are. They're how you connect with your friends, your loved ones. They're the stories that you make in your life. And some of you, those stories will only go a short distance, and others, they will go around the globe. Your stories will be the stories that are passed down to the next generation and the one after that, that will continue to shape humanity for what it is. So what I leave you with today is that your memories will serve you when you are called to answer the question, do you know who you are, and do you know where you're going? Thank you.